Topical Radio Talk Show program. I call it Global Affairs Unfiltered. That is my program now on X and YouTube. You can, if you're listening on air with the radio, you may want to seriously consider the free broadcasts that are available at YouTube and X. For YouTube, you would go to youtube.com/@globalaffairs_unfiltered. And if you prefer to listen to X maybe on your phone or whatever else, of course you can listen to YouTube on your phone. It would be x.com/globalaffairsUF. So I have a surprise for you the second hour this morning. I will be doing my first live stream with a guest. And my guest is going to be Harley Schlanger from Schiller and from LaRouche. We will be talking about the absolute need for Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel to get through these committees. And I kind of want to set the stage a little bit ahead of time before Harley gets on here with me, talking about why this is so important. So if you've got a way to write down a phone number, I want you to write down this number right now. I'll be giving it out during the show, and I will be giving it out during the interview with Harley. If you miss it right now, you can get it a little bit later. 703-777-4494. 703-777-4494 to get more information on the big issue and the reason why, of Senator Curtis. And that is why Harley's coming on the show today, because he might be dragging his feet. Our freshman senator in the Senate might be already, he's been in the House long enough. He knows how the game is played. And he might be dragging his feet. He might be a Republican who votes across the aisle against Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel. Now, while I've got some issues with Tulsi because she's flip-flopped on a few things, and the most important one to me was Article 720 of the Patriot Act. But we'll talk more about that with Harley when we get Harley on here. It'll be during the next hour. So some things I want to talk about during this hour, and I see some of you already joining on the stream. Thank you. We can build a bigger audience here if you are more than willing, on my behalf, to like and subscribe and share these broadcasts. So the following statement that I'm going to read, kind of brief, but is from the LaRouche Organization for the immediate distribution to leading up to the Senate hearings for Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel. Now, all the other stuff that's going on out there, some of the crazy things that Trump is saying he wants to do that cannot happen. In the midst of things that he is suggesting that are very practical and very prescient and do need to happen. One of the reasons why international leaders just don't trust the man, because they don't know where he's coming from. But one thing we do know, we know where Tulsi Gabbard is coming from, and we know where Kash Patel is coming from. And so I want to read this statement from the LaRouche Organization. I think it's very important. 50 years ago today, the U.S. Senate voted overwhelmingly to establish the Senate Select Committee to study governmental operations with respect to intelligence activities known as the Church Committee, chaired by Idaho Democrat Senator Frank Church. It was a turbulent period following the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, his younger brother Robert, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and the Vietnam War, and all the opposition to it. President Nixon had been forced out by Watergate. It had come to light that various U.S. government agencies had been involved in some rather unsavory and unconstitutional activities, both abroad and against American citizens at home, and members of the Senate, led by prominent Democrats, unlike the Democrat Party leadership of today, decided that an investigation was warranted. The opposition to the investigation, as revealed in a 2015 report published at the National Security Archive at George Washington University, was led by none other than Dick Cheney, who was an advisor to President Gerald Ford at the time. He, Donald Rumsfeld, Henry Kissinger, and then CIA Director William Colby did all they could to blunt the investigation, believing it would impede the ability of the agencies to continue their clandestine operations, you think? So despite Cheney's efforts, the Church Committee uncovered horrific abuses by federal agencies, including involvement in assassinations abroad and unspeakable. All right, yeah, I just told her some echo effect. I hope it's not too bad, because in order to have Harley on here, streaming and live at K-Talk at the same time, there might be a little bit of echo. I can get rid of the echo, but then I would only be heard on the stream and not K-Talk radio. It's still stuff I'm trying to figure out here. I'm trying to move, I thought, with light speed into the 21st century as far as getting information out. But my move is the stream. I am moving into the stream more and more with less and less radio. So if you want to be a part of what I have to offer in the mornings, I suggest you use YouTube or X. Both of them are free to hear the stream. And the sound is so much better than it is on the radio broadcast. Anyway, back to what I was reading here. Unspeakable crimes against Americans at home, like drugging and torturing unwitting college students in supposed mind control experimentation under Operation MKUltra, and COINTELPRO's collection of massive amounts of data on individuals involved in civil rights, anti-war, or organized labor activities in order to destroy their organizations and personal lives, just to name a few. Sadly, it has become obvious to the people of the United States that these nefarious clandestine activities, so harmful to our lives and the lives of billions of others on this planet, have not ended, but have become standard operating procedure. We wonder whether justice will ever be served and whether truth and justice are welcome under our beautiful Capitol dome. Since the publication of the Liars Bureau report, released by the LaRouche organization last week that I mentioned in my show last week, President Trump has signed an executive order mandating the long-awaited release of the files on the assassinations of President Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy, and Martin Luther King. The Director of National Intelligence is to preside over this process. President Trump has nominated Lieutenant Colonel and former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard for this job. The fact that she has been under constant slanderous attack from some of Dick Cheney's greatest supporters in the Democratic Party, like Hillary Clinton, speaks highly of her integrity. Similarly, Trump's choice for FBI Director Kash Patel has come under attack from those who simply cannot admit that Hillary Clinton was a terrible candidate for the presidency, whose corruption was revealed by leaked emails showing that she was stealing the Democratic Party nomination from Bernie Sanders. Clinton and Patel's opponents today would prefer to blame Russia for hacking the DNC server to release the emails, a claim which has been repeatedly disproven to distract from the real evidence of the corruption of the Democratic Party. Exposing the crimes committed by federal agencies and prosecuting the people involved in committing them is not what causes people to lose faith in the government. It is the crimes themselves which have led to the immense distrust felt by we the people for you who are supposed to represent us. On behalf of the LaRouche organization, let me put it directly. We don't trust you. We, the American people, don't trust you. Senators, we think you should seek to earn our trust by acting to clean up the criminal enterprise that our government has become. We know you are getting rich by funding wars overseas, killing people over there, while people die over here because we can't even afford to build modern infrastructure. It's a shame. Stop being shameful and confirm Gabbard and Patel. We have demonstrated in numerous instances a willingness to look behind the official narrative and tell the truth, even when powerful people don't want it known. Their relative youth, rather than being a hindrance, is an advantage in their proposed posts of Director of National Intelligence and Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. They will come in with fresh eyes, not jaded or already corrupted by years of accommodating to lies, as too many in Washington are. The American people are tired of being lied to. Gabbard and Patel would be a welcome change. Senators, earn our trust. I don't normally quote something that long on the radio show. It's certainly not with this new program with the stream. But that, I mean, that really gets right to the point. And I wanted to share that with you. Now, looking at what is going on around the planet with Trump suggesting things that cannot take place, in the midst of things that need to take place. And I titled this thing, "No Wonder International Leaders Don't Trust Him." There's a lot of people in America have a hard time trusting him, even people who were 100% Trump during the election and post-election period waiting for the inauguration, have a few reservations. Like me, I have a few reservations because while he represents himself as not wanting war and wanting to stop wars, he just okayed 2,000-pound bombs to Israel. And while he's in a position to cut off all cash and armament to the Ukraine, it's continuing. At the same time, he says he wants to sit down with Putin. And then out of the other side of his mouth, he makes all kinds of crazy claims about Putin and the Russian economy, which simply are not true. So either he's dancing around in an intentional dynamic to throw people off the track, which I don't know why he would want to do that, or he's getting some very bad advice. So we'll talk to Harley a little bit about that when he's on here. But when you look at what's happening around the rest of the world, with Trump now being the president, all these little things, all these little crises, they're starting to detonate all over the place. Nothing is slowing down. Nothing is slowing down. You know, the last few months of the Biden administration, what did you see? Nothing. Just nothing. And you saw less and less of him. You saw less and less of Harris after the election. And it's, you know, it's just the opposite around the world right now, because it's like fireworks. Fireworks going off all over the place. Now, to start off with the more promising, more optimistic aspects of these new policies coming from Trump, hopefully the emphasis and the reason for Harley being on the show is the confirmation hearings for Gabbard and Patel. It's tomorrow and Thursday, I believe, the 30th and 31st. And with this Liars Bureau dossier that has been passed out, given to the members of the Senate, especially this committee, who, you know, hopefully they look at it. And I think the members of the senators, you know, as I've said on a number of occasions, you can't get into a position of, I don't know, 3 terms in the Senate without having been bought and sold 10 times over. Unless, of course, you are someone of sincere, honest integrity. That'll show up in what you say, and it will certainly show up in how you vote. And obviously, this move right now by Trump to get Gabbard and Patel into these 2 critical intelligence positions, the more critical being Tulsi Gabbard as Director of National Intelligence. I gave the analogy yesterday of the upside-down funnel, where at the top of the funnel are all the intelligence agencies and all the armed services and national security, home security, the NSA, all the intelligence gathering into that funnel comes down to the little spout. And that spout is controlled by the Director of National Intelligence, hopefully Tulsi Gabbard. And this is all taking place at the 50th anniversary of the Church Committee, where Frank Church, senator of the state just north of us, revealed all these, as I said a little earlier in the program, all these horrible things that the government was involved with. Assassinations, foreign assassinations, allegations of domestic assassinations, and investigations that just threw the 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments out the window. So the last time that there was any real congressional oversight over the activity of the intelligence community, obviously a new church-like commission would be in the offing right now, and I think that's one of the reasons why they're worried about Tulsi, is that she might start an investigative commission into the activities of the United States intelligence agencies. And you can judge the value, you can usually judge the value of something by the gravity of the weight against it. And I've said this often about my earliest introductions and interviews on K-Talk Radio with Lyndon LaRouche. As I started to learn more about him, everybody hated him. Well, not everybody, but the left thought he was a fascist, the right thought he was a communist, the international socialist, I think is what Tom Drashel called him. But when you get into reading what he has to say, he's 100% American, 100% American system, and was more concerned with a productive economy than a consumer economy and all his ideas in order to establish that. So, but the thing that compelled me to learn more about him is that on every direction you could come in politically against him, everybody did. The only people who supported him were the people who understood what he was talking about and got the big idea. Now, the same thing with Tulsi Gabbard. Look at who's coming against her. The intelligence community. Look at who's coming against Kash Patel. The intelligence community. And they're trying to tell us they're not qualified, that they've had compromising behaviors and actions in the past. They're too young, they don't have the wisdom or the experience to be in, just all the different ways that they can attack them. So when I see the heavyweights coming against them, just as I said about LaRouche earlier, and I'm not comparing either one of these to Lyndon LaRouche by any means. I don't know what their opinions of the LaRouche organization are. It doesn't matter. What matters is the gravity of the people coming against them. So the fact that Trump has ordered the release of these files on the Kennedy brothers and King and Malcolm X and some others, I think belongs in the same weight category as the weight coming in against Gabbard and Patel. Now, it's noteworthy that Oliver Stone, who made the 1991 film JFK, put out a statement concerning this action on the part of Trump. He said this: President Trump deserves praise for yesterday's executive order. Those files should have been released in October of 2017. No one expects there to be a smoking gun. He did it. Document in those files. But from what previous writers understand, there will be information that will contribute to a more informed mosaic of what happened in those cases. So I think it's a useful comment by somebody who knows probably more about what's in those files, like Oliver Stone, than the average American does. But because, and I have said this from the first time Trump began announcing members of his cabinet, you get all these contradictory characters and contradictory policies, and you know, some of these are actually left, some of them are far right, and I think and then sticking to, we need to do this and this in his election promises, pre-election promises, and then doing the contrary once he got in there. One of the best examples of that is the executive order that Trump just issued, I think last Friday, which was to create the U.S. Strategic Reserve of Cryptocurrency, which called for the protection of the U.S. dollar. Now you gotta think about that for a second, because that doesn't make sense. And this is what I meant in the introductory title to today's radio program. That there are things that he's suggesting that can't be done in the midst of things he's suggesting that should and ought to be done in the sense of American sovereignty. But this cryptocurrency thing, you know, that one of the things that's attacking the dollar, and I want to get into a quote by Sergei Glaziev, who I've quoted many times from Russia. Part of the problem with American dollar is that there's just no end to the spending. And a lot of the printed dollars that we are making, either printed or digital, goes to buying American securities, treasury bills, bonds, just the different kinds of instruments that would indicate an investment in the dollar by investing in America. And there's fewer and fewer people doing that now because of these interest rates. And it's not as attractive as it used to be. Now, I'm going to quote Glaziev, because if people started investing in cryptocurrency, which is somewhat protected, better than the dollar, you're going to have less and less money going into the dollar. And the less money you have going into the dollar, the more weak the dollar will become. So this is what Glaziev said. This innovation can have fatal consequences. If before this decision, the dollar financial pyramid was losing stability, mainly due to a decrease in external demand for dollar instruments, now domestic demand will also fall as the cryptocurrency market expands. This will inevitably undermine the financial foundations of the American state. This already losing stability financial system can collapse under the onslaught of an avalanche of uncontrolled issued cryptocurrencies. Trump limits dollar circulation to the existing banking system, not allowing the dollar to circulate in an alternative distributed ledger system. What's he saying? Well, I don't want to take the time to go into that in detail, but what he's saying is, the more you invest in cryptocurrency, the less you invest in in instruments, bonds, T-bills, whatever else. And the less strength there is behind the American dollar, the more you get into an unregulated cryptocurrency area where what's backing it? I have cryptocurrency. I invested in cryptocurrency, 4 or 5 years ago, watched it go, but then I saw it do this, and then it did this, and then it did this, and then it did this. And when I put some money into cryptocurrency, I was told at the time, this is not a short-term investment. Be prepared for swings. Well, it has swung quite a bit, but look at the resurgence of Bitcoin and all the thousands of other coins that are waiting for that shadow to emerge to a stronger resilience and trust, and the little coins will start coming back again, and that's fine with me. But the problem is when you start having large amounts of money moving from the dollar to cryptocurrency, large, I mean huge investment, hedge fund money, Chinese money. How much of our debt does the Chinese and the Japanese hold? And they have been trying to get liquid with this stuff, and they're going to move to cryptocurrency. So what Glaziev is saying, because of Trump creating this bureau, this U.S. strategic reserve of cryptocurrency, where a lot of the American money would go into cryptocurrency as a reserve against the dollar. I'm not an economist by any means, but as I look at this, it looks extremely dangerous. Now, the obvious Achilles heel of the whole system is the fact that we're already in a systemic financial crisis, which is, as I've said many times, when countries are facing bankruptcy, when monarchies and kings are facing bankruptcy, what did they do? Well, they went running off to the Rothschilds. We need you to fund the war we're going to do. Now, there are some series on Netflix and some of the others that get into historical pictures. There's the Duchess, is it called The Duchess? I think at Netflix, about the Austrian, him, and his wife, who becomes very strong it's the, shoot, I'm sorry, but it's the one that helped to foster, I'll think of the name here in a second. Anyway, he's trying to borrow money to build a rail system in Austria. At the same time, Russia and France and everybody else, I think it's moving towards the Crimean situation, historically, if I remember right. And how the military people in the Austrian government is pushing for war. His mother is pushing for war. Got to join one side or the other, son. You got to join. And he says, no, I don't have to join either one. The money that I would have to borrow to buy cannons and horses and soldiers, I could build a rail system that would connect all the different parts of Austria into one great reserve of transportation, not just for people, but for goods. That's how you build an economy. At least that's one of the ways in which you build an economy. And the point I'm making is that we have turned away from that, and we're doing what nations have done in the past. War. You have a war policy. Gee, we're out of options, Bob. What are we going to do now? Let's declare war. Let's send in our insidious little cancerous minions to go in there and to disrupt the people, start to divide them, cause religious differences, political differences, get them all hot for war, and then let's have a little Reichstag event and a dirty bomb, whatever else, and then we have war, and then these countries have to come to us for money, and we can cover up the fact that we don't have any, so we'll just print the credit out of thin air so they can buy their bombs and bullets, and we can live to loan money another day. In the midst of all of that, this Ukrainian situation, and hopefully I've got some time to get to that before the show's over. The Ukrainian, casualties and loss of military hardware is intensifying, which is shifting the attrition rates even further to Russia's advantage. I was looking at some numbers the other day, and it looks like it, where they were exchanging the dead. Bring out your dead. As they would gather them off the battlefield. And many times they're left there to absolutely rot. But in some of these latest battles, Kursk and these other areas, as they move towards Petrovsk, they will exchange the dead. The Russians will bring the Ukrainian dead, the Ukrainians will bring the Russian dead. It's about 15 to 1. 15 Ukrainians for one Russian soldier. And this is just heartbreaking. I'm quoting here from Glenn Deason, a very useful description. He says, in a war of attrition, and that's just where you lose soldiers, you lose tanks, you lose bombs and bullets, you lose planes without them being replaced until last man standing kind of thing. And he says, in a war of attrition, the losses will naturally increase when the war machine has reached its breaking point. Then he says, soldiers have weaker strategic positions, there is a lack of resources, supply chains are not sufficiently defended, and there is a collapse in morale. This often has a cascading effect. This was visible when it was clear that Russia was able to bring in powerful glide bombs, and the Ukrainian air defense collapsed. We are now seeing the final stages of war with a logistical breakdown, a lack of weapons, and a lack of manpower. A more aggressive mobilization deprives society of important labor. It creates social upheaval as the public observes their family and fellow citizens being dragged off the streets and thrown into vans. Furthermore, the recruits receive less training and are much less motivated. Simply put, a new army can't be built in a rush. So Ukraine is losing its best soldiers. Unreliable soldiers can be a tremendous liability as the front lines do not hold. The war has been lost. So the more the army becomes vulnerable, there is a likelihood that weaker officers are striking a deal with Russia. There is a sense of betrayal as the US and NATO provoke the war and sabotage the Istanbul peace agreements. The last big risk, the Kursk operation, was clearly not likely to succeed. In Donbass, there are massive casualties. the lack of soldiers who have been sent to the Kursk region, and so forth and so on. And then he describes in great detail these cascading elements reinforcing each other, that it's now time for NATO to realize the horrible mistake that they have made and start getting diplomatic. Because, and then to quote again this, that this could first not trigger a nuclear exchange, but much like Afghanistan, the political media elites will reassure us that we're winning until we flee in a disorganized manner with people falling off of planes. Well, how accurate a description is that? I think it's very accurate. And then there is Seymour Hersh commenting on the Trump's opposing signals to Russia. On the one side, and this is what Hersh is leading to here, he says he wants to negotiate, and then on Trump, you know, before the election, I can end the Ukrainian war in 24 hours and other such nonsense. Now it's not 24 hours, it's 100 days or whatever else. And then we want to sit down, and I just can't wait to go talk to Vlad myself and get this matter taken care of. And then out of the other side of his mouth, he makes threats, like the offer of the mafia. You know, we'll make them an offer they can't refuse. So on the one side, he says nice things about Putin. On the other side, he's making, well, we'll make him an offer he can't refuse. So this is all confronted by a Russia which is making great military gains on the battlefield. So they're in no hurry to pursue this. And it seems that all of this amounts to a situation where the estimates also given by Keith Kellogg, who's Trump's envoy to the Ukraine, who, based on a lot of the comments that he's made over the last several weeks, he doesn't understand Russia. He doesn't understand Putin. He doesn't understand the desperate situation that Ukraine is in. You know, it's kind of like, you know, I don't want this to sound racist, because I don't think I'm talking racist, but I'm talking about the United States Army 150 years ago on the American frontier, and some of the renegade American Indian bands, Geronimo and that crowd, that were fighting to the last man practically, till they finally surrendered, for their homeland. And we, being the invader into their land, which was obviously the dynamic that was going to take place one way or the other, and the removal of the American Indian from their homelands to reservations. But the battles that would go on between them, fighting in some of these battles to the last man. And I see in the trees, the tops of these trees, the branches surrounding these battlefields, these vultures watching the battle go on below them until it's time to eat the dead. You know who the vultures are in the Battle of Ukraine? Yeah, BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. Just waiting for the bullets to stop firing, for the dust to settle, so they can go in there and clean up the strategic mineral deposits, the wheat fields that hopefully haven't been totally destroyed by uranium-filled ammunition, and to take the country to themselves. All the while, collective Biden and crew, kept sending the bullets and the bombs and everything else to keep this slaughter going. And now, the kinds of comments I hear coming out of President Trump's mouth doesn't seem like it's going to change a whole lot. And when you look at Keith Kellogg, he says the thing that this whole thing is going to be settled in the first 100 days. First it was 24 hours, now it's 100 days, which makes much more sense. But what do you think Trump is going to hear from Putin when they sit down to talk? What is Putin going to say to Trump? All right, Donald, all right. You win. Not on your life. Not on your life. President Trump, General Keith Kellogg may show up with a list of their demands. And Putin, being a gentleman, I think if I was Putin, I would just take, oh, this is your demands? No, he'll just sit there and say, well, all right, we appreciate your demands. Let me tell you how it's going to be, Donald. And they're not going to give up the land that they've taken. And they'll take more. They're going to take Odessa. They'll have complete control of all of the seaports on the north end of the Black Sea. They're not going to, they'll leave a fighting force strong enough to hold on to what they've done until the Ukraine writes into their constitution, whatever government is left, we will never ever join NATO. We will demilitarize, and all foreign war parties will remove their missiles and their bombs and their bullets and their cannons and their nerve gas. And number three, every last Nazi in Western Ukraine and in the Kyiv government will be exposed for who they are and dealt with appropriately by law, by bullet, whatever else. That's where we're at. And so you have a president who says, well, you know what? I think I can end this in 24 hours. Well, his constituency loves that kind of stuff. And how he's going to close down the border in 24 hours. Well, that's a lot easier thing to do than ending the Ukrainian war or the Gazan slaughter. And so he talks about how he's going to change the Palestinian situation. Oh, I've got the answer. We're just going to take all those 1.5 million people and move them. We'll send in all these moving trucks and we'll pick them all up and we'll move them over to Egypt, where Sisi has said, au contraire, no thank you. Well, then we'll take them over to Jordan, and the king says, au contraire, no. The majority of my country is already Palestinian. My reign in this country is already seriously in doubt. You're not bringing one more Palestinian into my country. So both Egypt, Trump's idea to just relocate Palestinian people. Oh yeah, that's easy. Let's just relocate them. Pick them up. That's against the Geneva Convention to move a mass population. I don't know if President Trump's aware of that. But Egypt is saying no, Jordan is saying no, and because Egypt won't agree to it, they fear that the Palestinian camp in the Sinai would give more room to the Muslim Brotherhood activities. Jordan, as I said, already has a zillion refugees from Palestine, and you cannot relocate an entire people, as the Geneva Convention says. So this has been, Trump's idea of moving the Palestinians has been strongly rejected by the Palestinian presidency. They said this, quote, "We emphasize that the Palestinian people will never abandon their land or their holy sites, and we will not allow the repetition of the catastrophic Nakba of 1948 and 67. Our people will remain steadfast and will not leave their homeland." And then Egypt and the Arab League also have rejected Trump's ideas. Jordan's foreign minister, speaking on behalf of the king, said that their rejection of Trump's ideas are firm and unwavering, which obviously puts a kind of an ambiguous remark that Gaza is a very special place on the seaside. When Trump said that, I thought, what's he going to do? Bring in golf courses? Condominiums? All-inclusive resorts? I don't know, maybe that's out of place for me to say that, but that was my first idea. What are you talking about? Even though the ceasefire seems to be holding somewhat in the Gaza right now, with more hostages being exchanged, and as I pointed out yesterday, look how healthy looking the Israeli hostages held by Hamas look, as opposed to the gaunt, emaciated condition of the Palestinian hostages released by the IDF. Now, granted, there's an awful lot more Palestinian hostages held by Israeli prisons, and they may not, be feted with a smorgasbord buffet that necessarily that the Israeli hostages have at the hands of Hamas. But the ceasefire is still holding in Gaza. Unfortunately, that is not the case in the West Bank, where the aggressive actions against the Palestinians is just accelerating. It does not look good. The understatement of the year. It does not look good in the West Bank. And the situation with Iran remains open. It could be the Iranians for sure, with the idea of remedying their relationships in the West. With the thing that Scott Ritter has talked, the JCPOA plan to renew that Ritter talks about. Al Khamenei, not Al, Big Al, Ali Khomeini, who's still the supreme leader in Iran, was the person who made it possible for the candidacy and the presidency of Pezeshkian, who is very pro-West, very pro, let's sit down and talk about these things. So hopefully that big war can be avoided, which is why I have said several times, I don't think Iran really is the next target of Netanyahu and the IDF. I think it's Turkey. I still think it's Turkey. Then, what else? Oh, the big fiery talk that went on between President Trump and the Prime Minister of Denmark went on for 45 minutes last week. And according to various reports, it didn't go well. I mean, can you imagine Russia, Putin, telling the United States government, we want Alaska back. We'll pay you what you paid us. What was it, $48? I remember what it was. But we want Alaska back. There's Russian DNA spread throughout the Alaskan people. And so we want Alaska back. No, and we'll pay to put up the new flags. You don't even have to worry about it. Yeah, you know how well that would go over. And so Denmark is being left panicked and upset. And Frederiksen, who is the prime minister, who is an Atlanticist, who is pro-West, who is, hey, we have a history of joining hands with North America, politically and otherwise. She has offered as something different than what Trump is saying, ownership of Greenland. She's saying, well, you can put in more troops if you want. Because the idea was that Greenland, the most northern part of Greenland, way up above the Arctic Circle, is not that far, well, it's not that far from Russian territorial waters, but it's not all that much further from Russian land. And medium-range missiles can reach Moscow from the northern tip of Greenland. And so the offer to Trump, well, you can bring in more soldiers if you want, but we're not going to give you Greenland. That didn't go over well. And then in the solution, Denmark is saying, well, let the Greenlanders have their own sovereignty. Let them declare independence. We'll trade with them as we have. We'll provide support as we have, but let them become independent. So this, a question from Financial Times said, the idea, says some of the officials, Denmark, answering a question from, it was very hard, it was like a cold shower, the conversation with Trump. This is potentially extremely dangerous. Denmark is now in a crisis mode, the Danes are completely flipped out. So obviously one of the reasons why Greenland is of such a big interest is because with the global warming, which is nonsense, it's expected that some of the waters will be ice-free even before 2030, and since there are very large quantities of rare earth minerals, so great that it would cover 60% of the yearly requirements for Europe, there is obviously such an interest involved in as the prime element in holding on to Greenland. I mean, Greenland isn't just one big chunk of ice. There's land under that ice. And where some of that land gets exposed in warmer temperatures in the summertime, and the drilling, exploratory stuff that's gone on, they found strategic minerals. Strategic minerals in that you can't build bombs, high-speed aircraft, hypersonic missiles, atomic weapons, nuclear weapons without these strategic minerals. Then what else? I was going to talk about China for a moment. We're kind of coming towards the end. I want to give you this phone number again because in about 10 minutes I'm going to have Harley on here from live on the stream. And I hope this is going to work because he will be heard loud and clear on the stream. And I'm saying these things to induce you to start listening to this radio program on the stream as opposed to the radio broadcast. The sound is better, you get to see me, and the guests that I will be bringing on. I was never able to bring on guests at K-Talk because of the innocuous phone calls that come in while you're talking to a guest. I think I'm coughing into the microphone, I'm sorry. But I can do that on the stream. Now there's going to be a little logistical problem here because if I were to plug in my headphones and talk to Harley, only those on the stream would hear him. But there would be no echo because there's a little bit of feedback going on. I have a couple things here I think that can reduce it during the time he's on, but I don't know what's going to happen when he's on here on the stream live with me as far as feedback potential, because my little microphone that I have here that is broadcasting at AM 1640, I'm going to have to lay down here in front of the speakers on my computer so that you can hear not just me, but what Harley is saying. But those of you who are on the stream, you'll hear everything just fine. Now, how do you get on the stream? You go to youtube.com/@ Global Affairs Unfiltered. And you'll walk right in. Free, absolutely free. Will that put me on a list somewhere? You're already on 50 lists. What's one more? I don't know. Or if you want to hear it on X, sometimes that's easier. I recommend Facebook, but I mean YouTube. But on X, it would be x.com/ @ Global Affairs UF. I only get so many letters that I can use at X. So, haven't had any negative comments about sound on the stream so far. But I greatly appreciate your listenership, greatly appreciate I don't take this stuff for granted. But I wanted to talk about France, I wanted to talk about Orban in Hungary and Germany, and just Germany just absolutely falling apart and what's going to happen if MERS gets in there. I don't have any time to get into that because we're coming towards the end of the first hour. Tomorrow, of course, will be a 2-hour stream on health topics, not the least of which will be gallbladder. Gallbladder problems are so easy to fix. We do it all the time in the office without surgery. And then probably a couple of other things. But the big thing that I'm going to be talking to Harley about is this tomorrow and the next day, the hearings regarding Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel. And I think Kennedy is later, maybe Friday, or whatever. And all the effort that is being spent monetarily, physically, whatever else, to make sure that these two people do not get confirmed. And the reason that Harley is coming on, one of the reasons, is because our freshman senator, John Curtis, may be dragging his foot about confirming these two people. If he doesn't confirm these two people, as I said yesterday, I'll do everything to make sure he's a one-term senator. Because then you know who he's working for. And anybody who gives you the excuse, well, they're just too young, they don't know what's really going on, and they haven't been involved, that's just not true. I went through all of those hit points yesterday on Tulsi Gabbard, all the major arguments as to why she is not competent, why she's not prepared, why she's not grounded, why she's had collusions with Russia and collusions with Assad, and how empty those arguments are. I talked about that yesterday. That, I don't know if I talked about the first hour or second hour, but that's should be available on the stream. All these shows, it's nice that you're listening live. I appreciate it because I can see the numbers. But they are saved. You can always come back and listen to them later. If you are listening on K-Talk, you can always go into my channels at X and YouTube and listen to these things later on if you don't get to hear the entire show. Now, at the risk of sounding somewhat self-serving and arrogant about all this, I think this is valuable information. And I try to give you my sources as best I can. Most of this is available just by reading news sources. I get a lot of it from Schiller Institute. I get a lot of it from LaRouche. And I get a lot of it from Judge Napolitano and the guests that he has. And I am a member of the Schiller Institute. I donate money monthly to them because I think they're one of the last bastions of truth, along with the Judge Napolitano show and his guests. And you look at the comments that he gets from the other side. And again, you weigh the importance of, one way of weighing the importance of something is the size of the opposition against it. So we have a way here to clean out the deep state legally. We have a way here to clean out the deep state forcefully. And a lot of that rests in the hands of these Senate investigative committees looking at these potential leaders of what is coming down the pike here as far as the future of America and the future of the world is concerned. Somebody made a comment yesterday, Jack, you're moving around too much in that picture. You need to let me. I'm a mover. I move around. All right, what I'm going to do now is you're going to go to the news for a few minutes, then I'm going to interrupt it. As soon as I can get Harley on the stream with me, he should be popping in here in the next minute or two, if I've set this up correctly. Hopefully I have. Now, those of you on the stream, the news is playing at K-Talk right now, and I am just waiting. I'll probably take this off. I'm just waiting for Harley to join me. Write down this number. This number is very important. Ah, there he is.
Hello.
He should be popping on here any second.
Jack, can you hear me?
Ah, there he is.
Did you want to use video, Jack?
Here, while I turn down my stuff.
Since it's radio, I'm going to turn off the picture so that the bandwidth is protected. Do you hear me, Jack?
Just hold on a second here, Harley.
Okay.
We may have a problem here. Just hold on a second, Harley.
Yeah, okay.
I know what to do. Hold on. All right. Okay, so the tail end of that is coming through on the stream. It'll stop here in a few seconds, and then we should be okay.
Should I leave the video on or take it off?
Yeah, you're on video. You're on the stream with me right now.
Okay.
Your pretty shining face. I
Yeah.
just need to wait for this last little bit to finish. As I've shut it down, but there's a delay. There we go. Okay, so the tail end is coming through on the screen and stop here in a few seconds, and then we should be okay. You get that? Can you hear that feedback, Harley?
Yeah.
Your pretty shining face. I just need to wait for this last. We can't. The only thing I think I can do. As I shut it down, but there's a delay. There we go. All right. Can you hear that feedback, Harley? Are you still getting a feedback now, Harley?
A very small one. It sounds like some crickets.
The only thing I think I can do.
Are you hearing me okay?
Yeah, I hear you just fine, buddy. My problem is I have to use my phone as the broadcast microphone for the radio show.
That's what'll do it.
And if there's a little bit of feedback, we can live with that.
Okay.
Because your participation in today. Now, the people who are listening on the stream, it should be okay, but it's the radio connection. I hate to look like such a novice, but I'm such a novice in trying this new way of broadcasting way beyond the K-Talk broadcast signal.
I'm used to it, Jack. I have to go to my 10-year-old kid, Jack, and get him to do things on my phone for me.
As the broadcast microphone. And here's the delay. Oh, I didn't take this into account. There's a 45-second delay from what we say that comes over the radio broadcast. Do you hear me talking over myself?
I hear in the background, yeah, but when you speak, I hear you clearly.
All right, so what I need to hear from the radio, you've got to turn off the radio. Yes, you're right, everybody. I have to turn off the radio, and if I turn off the radio, you're only going to be able to hear Harley on the stream. And then there'll end up being dead air at the radio station. So, Paul, I do not want to interrupt this discussion with Harley. Oh my goodness, what a mess. The only way to stop that feedback, so everybody, I want you to write down this number. This number is very important. 703-777-4494. 703-777-4494. And if I have to terminate the radio broadcast in order to do this, you can come back and listen to what Harley has to say later at youtube.com/@Global Affairs Unfiltered, because this is being recorded right now. That it needs to be shared. What Harley's going to talk about here needs to be shared because it involves our freshman senator. So Paul, if you're listening, I need you to broadcast something at K-Talk before I commit the unpardonable sin, because I don't know how to play something there. Let me see if I can get Paul on here. Yes, I know, I've got to turn off the radio, I understand that. Before I completely lay an egg here. Bye. Just hold on a second here. Let me see if I can get Paul on here. Yes, I know, I've got to turn off the radio, I understand. I don't hear a lot of feedback right now. All right, Harley, let's go ahead and talk. Welcome to Global Affairs Unfiltered.
Thank you for the invitation, Jack.
Yeah, believe it or not, you got something to do with this. Because what I've learned from you. Bye. All right. Just hold on a second here. Oh, shit. Paul, listen, I have to make a huge apology to my radio audience because I have to stop that broadcast. I hear a lot of feedback right now. Let's go ahead and talk. Welcome to Global Affairs Unfiltered. All right, Harley, let's just talk. Let's see what happens. Believe it or not, you got something to do with this. Because what I've learned from you. So before you came on the air here, Harley, I was talking about the hearings tomorrow and Thursday for Gabbard and Patel. And I know you have an awful lot more to offer. And why don't we just pick up from right there?
All right. I think the important thing is that President Trump has made a very strong commitment to clean up what he calls the deep state, or the permanent bureaucracy. And the permanent bureaucracy is most powerful in the executive branch, in the Justice Department, in the intelligence community, the Defense Department, and Homeland Security. And this is the agency that was responsible for trying to keep Trump out initially in 2016 by running the Russiagate story. And the person who knows probably the most about who was involved in Russiagate from the FBI, CIA, NSA, and others is Kash Patel. And so Trump's decision to put him in as FBI director shows that he's serious about cleaning out the FBI as a weaponized political force and turning it back into what it's supposed to be, which is a law enforcement arm of the federal government. There are people who are from that FBI operation against Trump, which didn't stop after his election, which continued throughout the 4 years of his presidency and continued after that with the legal cases and the pressure on him. There's still, many of them are still in the FBI. And they appealed to their friends outside the FBI to launch a campaign to get the Senate to not approve Patel's nomination. Now, Gabbard is even more important because Gabbard has experience with directly confronting US government agencies involved in lying, censoring, uh, commitment to war. She's very much involved in looking at what happened in Ukraine. And she's made the point, which we've made, which is that when people say Putin's actions were unprovoked, that's just not true. And people who are on the inside who know that don't want to have someone who knows that it was a provoked operation sitting on top of the intelligence community. The director, the National Intelligence Office that she'll head, oversees 18 intelligence agencies. And she'll be there, assuming she's confirmed, to keep an eye on it and make sure that they're not running false flag operations. They're not acting against the true interest of the United States. And that in that sense, the two of them represent the most important watchdogs that the president is going to deploy. And he intends to get them through. The Democrats are almost entirely united in stopping their nominations. And unfortunately, they only need to get 3 Republicans to turn against them, or actually 4 Republicans to stop them. And that's what the entire apparatus of the so-called deep state, of the people who don't want Trump as president, they're involved in a campaign to intimidate or change the votes or do whatever they can to get 4 Republicans to vote against Gabbard and Patel. And so that's the background of the story. What we did is that we put together a dossier called the Liars Bureau, which identifies some of the people who were involved in the dirty tricks against Trump, in the commitment to US troops around the world, and so on. The ones who are today saying Gabbard has no experience, Patel doesn't know what he's doing, these people aren't qualified. And what we point out is these are the same people who said that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction that got us into that war. The same people who have been wrong over and over and over are trying to silence the patriotic grouping from addressing the corruption in the intelligence communities. So we wrote this dossier, which is available. And if you want to get a copy, Jack gave the number out before, I'll give it out again. Call this number and tell them you want to see the Liars Bureau report on who's who in the deep state and why they're trying to stop Gabbard and Patel. And we'll get back in touch with you and make sure you get it. And that number is 703-777-4494. That's 703-777-4494. And I'm sure we'll come back to that, Jack. But that's basically my introductory statement as to what we're involved in today. The hearings, by the way, are going to be Thursday. So in 2 days.
Okay, I have disconnected from K-Talk. Paul is going to be playing something else there. Obviously, this I have some people here that are upset. I have, it's just, you are my first live guest on my stream. And obviously, I've got to be able to work out a way, and it involves audio hookups here that
Yeah.
Let me tell you, I lost a lot of sleep last night, tossing and turning over what I
Ah.
thought was going to happen, and it has happened. Now I am not broadcasting at K Talk. Paul is taking care of that, and so we are. And we have a big audience at the stream right now. So let's just continue with this.
Well, and Jack, let me say this. When you do figure it out, I'm more than happy to come on again and be live with you. So that's
Well, I
that's
was
a
going to
promise.
suggest that. I was going to suggest that that happen. So, now I need to do one more thing because there's a little bit of an echo. I know how to get rid of this echo.
At our age, it's always good to learn something new.
That's true. We're rather similar in age. Now, for those who are on the stream, there is no echo left. It's just you and me with really good StreamYard connection. So let's just go
Good.
from here. Yeah,
All right.
they can hear you just loud and clear, and everything is fine. And thank you, everybody. I see the audience increasing, so I appreciate that. And you know what we might do, Harley, is do this again and record it. And then I will just tell my audience, all they have to do is just go to youtube.com/@globalaffairs_unfiltered, and the show will be sitting there and they can listen to it later. But there are several people listening to this live right now, so. And please, everybody, remember to share this wherever you can. Because what Harley is saying here, there are every now and then there are these earmarks in history that people will look back at, some historian some decade down the road, and say, here was a critical juncture point in the history of America,
Yeah.
either for the better or for the worse. What's happening this week with the Intelligence Committee is one of those earmarks. So, Harley, do we know who those possible senators are that might be dragging their feet?
Well, there were three who voted against Hegseth. From Maine, Susan Collins, Murkowski from Alaska, and then Mitch McConnell from Kentucky. But fortunately, only the three voted against him. And so J.D. Vance, as the president of the Senate, had the tie-breaking vote, and he voted for Hegseth. Now, if the same thing happens in these confirmation hearings, well, that means they'll get in. But for example, one of the people who's considered to be soft in support of these nominations is your junior senator from Utah, John Curtis. And he has not yet committed to vote for Trump's choice. Now, this is something that I think your listeners need to light a fire under him. You know, sometimes people say, as you just said, this is a historic moment. What if these two people are denied the opportunity to serve the country and serve the president because of Senator Curtis giving in to pressure from Democrats and war hawks and voting against them? Well, this is where you, as the listeners and viewers of Jack's show, can play a role. Congressmen do listen when they get a lot of calls. And by a lot, sometimes 5 or 6 will make a difference. Imagine if this audience, everyone got on the phone after this is done and called Senator Curtis's office and said, support the president, support Gabbard, support Patel. It would make a difference. And so that's why I asked Jack if we could have this discussion today, because I know there are a lot of good people in Utah who are committed to cleaning out the corruption and the rot in the permanent bureaucracy, but you don't know what to do. Well, here's a case where what you do can have an immediate impact. And I have a team of my collaborators and colleagues who are in Washington today, tomorrow, and Thursday, visiting Senate offices to make sure that those people who are going to vote for them stay firm. And they'll probably stop by Senator Curtis's office probably 2 or 3 times. But in the meantime, this is one of those calls that can make a difference for history. Imagine if we would have had someone in the Director of National Intelligence Office who, when Tony Blair came to George W. Bush and said, we have absolute proof that Saddam has weapons of mass destruction. And the DNI back then would have said, that's not true, and we're not going to go to war over your fake intelligence. How many Americans who died in Iraq would still be alive? How many Iraqis, innocent civilians, would still be alive? This is the kind of thing we're talking about. Yeah, this is exactly what we're talking about. That these kinds of operations are designed to keep nations attacking each other. This is called geopolitics. You divide countries up against each other so that the global corporate cartels who pay for the Senate and the House can get their policies through while everyone else is watching the war. And by the way, they make a lot of money on military investments. The 200 to 300 billion that's gone to the Ukraine war so far, most of it didn't get to the soldiers. It got to Zelensky and his cronies and to the corporate cartels in the United States in the military industrial complex. So what's at stake here is, will the United States return to its traditions as a defender of justice and truth, or will we be the country that goes as all empires do, crashes in a cloud of dust because it's lost support not only of the rest of the world, but of our own people? And President Trump's election was largely due to the fact that people didn't trust Biden, and especially not Blinken and Sullivan, who kept saying, we're going to win the Ukraine war. Russia can't win. They're going to look very foolish. And remember also, Jack, the other issue here was the Hunter Biden laptop. 51 intelligence so-called professionals, including former CIA directors like John Brennan, Mike Morrell, all of them signed on to the statement saying that the Hunter Biden laptop was a phony issue. It was a Russian intelligence operation. Turns out they were all wrong. These are the people who are saying we can't let Tulsi Gabbard in because she's not part of the old boys club. That's exactly why she should be confirmed.
What I was saying prior to, let me get my microphone there. What I was saying prior to you coming on the show was, a lot of times, and I was using LaRouche as an example in the past, you look at the gravity of the forces against somebody when it's coming from all sides is an indication that these people might have something worthy of listening to. And what I said in my earliest days, oh gosh, over 25 years ago or whatever, in fact, the first week of March will be my 30th year of broadcasting at K-Talk. And so at least 26, 27 years ago, when I first started talking to LaRouche, the thing that got me interested in listening to him was that the left didn't like him, the right didn't like him, the center didn't understand him. And to me, that was worthy of further investigation. Now, when I see, as you're saying now, the very people who led us into these wars, led us into these foreign assassinations, led us into Russiagate and all these other things that we know now are absolutely false, when they all band together to make sure that somebody like Tulsi Gabbard doesn't make it in there, I think that's worthy of investigation. And one of the things that's really helped with people, especially the K-Talk audience, and Americans in general, as some of them are beginning to wake up, is this little device right here.
Yeah.
Because of all the videos, all the phone calls, all the stuff that shows up from foreign nationals, soldiers, battlegrounds, journalists you've never heard of, that keep uploading these kinds of sources of information on an hour-by-hour basis to X and to some of the other platforms out there, where people who will spend a few minutes can actually find out the truth of what's going on. And that's one of the reasons why I've started streaming here, because I just can't have guests strictly on the radio broadcast because of the way the station is situated as far as equipment's concerned. So I will be doing a lot more of this. So anyway, the point I'm kind of rambling out in the weeds here, but the point I'm trying to make is when you see what have been considered in years past leaders in the American intelligence community saying, no, 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 say no to Tulsi, say no to Tulsi, because they know what's going to happen if she gets in there. She's
But,
going to lift the corner of the carpet and say, look, not just the dust, look at all the crap that's piling up underneath this carpet under the umbrella of the American intelligence community. And
Jack, to that point, let me just add, it's interesting because you find people as diverse as Hillary Clinton and AOC agreeing with John Bolton and John Brennan.
yes,
The one thing that unites the so-called left and right is an honest patriot who's not part of the game. And of course, this was one of the reasons people voted for Trump was you may not know exactly what he's going to do. And I would say there's some things he's saying and doing now that I find a little questionable. But I'm fully in support of his intention to clean out these corrupt layers of the intelligence community, the Justice Department, the permanent bureaucracy, which, as LaRouche identified, these are people who are basically part of a bureaucratic fascist network that has maintains its control through censorship and intimidation and blackmail
and murder.
and murder. Yeah. And that's why it was important that one of the first things President Trump did after the inauguration was announce he's going to open the Kennedy files and the Martin Luther King file. Now, there may not be any evidence left in there. You know, you give the intelligence community 50, 60 years to clean their records, they probably can do it. But the important thing is that by doing it, he's sending a message. If this is done again, if there's a cover up again, we're going to get you before you can get away. And again, that's why it's important that someone like Gabbard, who has no vested interest in making sure that these wars continue. She was a soldier. She was in Iraq, I think, 2 or 3 times.
Yes.
And she knows the way the dignity that is attacked in wartime, where your only thing that saves you is your colleagues, your brothers and sisters in battle, as she says. And you have to depend on them. You have to have honesty and toughness to survive. And that's why a lot of the older people that you see on podcasts, like Douglas McGregor, Scott Ritter, people who have been in battle, who have been in these situations, were so contemptuous of people like Blinken, who had a soft life. When Blinken says, oh, we're trying, but we have to defend Ukraine. Well, the whole point of the Ukraine war is to stop Russia from supporting a break from the control of the world by this imperial force out of London and Wall Street that's wrecked the US economy, that's wrecking the European economy. And these are people who are saying, why are we spending so much in terms of money and human treasure in wars that have nothing to do with our security? And that's why someone like Gabbard has a certain amount of stature and support from many, many veterans. Not the veterans in the intelligence community, like Mike Morell, the guy who was the initiator of the Hunter Biden laptop letter. He was asked to do it. I don't know if your listeners know this. Morell was asked to do it by Tony Blinken when Blinken was a top advisor to the Biden campaign in 2020. That's where the initiation of the so-called intelligence community letter against the Hunter Biden laptop story came from. Blinken to Morell. And next thing you know, 51 intelligence professionals signed it. Did they actually think about what they were doing, or did they just do it because of loyalty to their fellow intelligence professionals? And that's where you see, instead of loyalty to the truth and to the American people, it's to serve private benefit. And that's really, I think, ultimately what will be their downfall.
Well, a lot of them, this is where their rice bowl comes from. I don't know how or what kind of particular loyalty to the Constitution or the American people or anything else that some of these intelligence people are involved with that may have, wavering loyalty one way or the other. But this is their rice bowl. This is how they get paid. This is how they get promoted. This is how they get nice pensions when they're done. All in the dynamic that really undermines the very source of that rice bowl. And
Look at John Brennan, who's now an on-air consultant or analyst for MSNBC.
yeah, yeah, another dying network.
Yeah,
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, and some of the generals that even Fox will pull on from sometimes talks about how the Russian army is having trouble and losing ground inside the Ukraine. It's this deep state, not just the intelligence community, the media, Hollywood,
yeah.
sports, organized sports for that matter. That recent book that came out, The Fix, is in. And oh my goodness, the allegations that take place in there, just even right down to the coming Super Bowl, how things are being done to orchestrate the end of that game. And it's 2 weeks away. But the important thing is with Trump in a position where if he carries through with a lot of these campaign promises that he's already doing with the border, doing with DEI in the military and the government,
Pulled us out of the climate agreement.
yeah, getting us out of the Paris Accord, getting us out of the World Health Organization, thank goodness, that has these massive vaccine mandates that they have planned. Get us out of all of that stuff. And then on the other hand, he wants to send 2,000-pound bombs to Gaza. And
Yeah.
he flip-flops on some other things. But I think at heart, the man's a patriot. And
Well, he's also against war.
he's against war, but he's getting some very bad advice
Yeah.
from somebody right now. And to me, it's the Mike Pompeo effect.
Yeah.
But he's not in there. But somebody's in there giving him some very bad advice from some of these crazy statements he's making about the Ukraine war, the 700,000 dead Russians, and how they're losing ground, and these kinds of statements. At the same time, he's backed off from, well, I can end that war in 24 hours. Now Kellogg is saying, no, it's going to take us 100 days. I can't wait to sit down with Putin, he says. But at the same time, he insults Putin. Is he bipolar? It's just, is he trying to throw people off his track so they don't know what he's going to do next, like a magician's sleight of hand? What do you think? I mean, what is all this duplicity coming out of one man about?
Well, I think his main thing is he wants to disrupt business as usual. And he's a
Well, he's
disruptor
doing
in
that.
chief. Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
And he's giving everybody nightmares. He's got to stick to a couple of core principles, though. And I think the most important thing is that he talked to Xi Jinping, he talked to Putin. He's not going to rush to war. He's not going to let war hawks like John Bolton or Pompeo get him into war. Even with Iran, as much as he's talked against Iran, if the Iranians come forward and make it clear that they're not going to build nuclear weapons and they're willing to participate in discussion, he's enough of a pragmatist that he can go along with that. But on the other side, one of the things that's being used against him is comparing a pullout from the Ukraine war to what Biden did in Afghanistan. And that's being thrown in his face constantly. Are you going to give up after all these people were killed, after all the fighting was done? And I think it's caused him to rethink some things. It's also the case that, look, the military knows that Russia has won the war and that Ukraine cannot win this war. The question then is, what would be the terms of peace? Now, to the extent that Trump is holding back on just going in and settling it, he's backing off one of his other principles, which is not listening to NATO, not letting NATO set the terms of discussion. And this is where I see the potential danger, because the NATO people are insane. If you saw anything of what happened at the Davos World Economic Forum that just took place, what Trump said when he got there went against everything that the Europeans were saying. The climate issue, the World Health Organization, supporting Ukraine, on and on and on. All of them were against what Trump was saying. And yet he's hesitating at a point where decisive action is necessary. I don't mean decisive action to take over Greenland or make Canada the 51st state, although I find that kind of humorous because I know it really irks people like Trudeau.
Yeah.
Don't,
But he's
don't
on his
forget
way
that,
out.
yeah, he's a troller. He likes to troll people.
Yes.
And he got a kick out of what happened with the Mexican president when he said this thing about the, when he said this thing about uh, the Gulf of Mexico changing the name. She showed a map that showed the Western states as the Mexican American nation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he laughed at that. He said, that's pretty good. So some of this is trolling, some of it is anger at what's been done to him. Remember, he's been a victim of a weaponization of the Justice Department and the justice system. And he survived it. So there's a toughness there. But I think it's necessary for him to listen to some other people, including someone like Putin, someone like Xi Jinping. So that's my hope is he'll do those meetings as quickly as possible. That gets him outside of the inner circle of the people that control both parties and both sides of the debate in the United States.
Let's change the direction a little bit. I want to give this number again really quick. This number is very, very important. 703-777-4494. 703-777-4494. For more information from Harley regarding this these hearings that are going to be going on tomorrow and Thursday. And it's, it's when it, Murkowski and Collins are probably going to do the same thing again, don't you think?
Yeah, they seem to be pretty committed to being disruptors of Trump.
Yeah, and so it's going to take that vote by Vance to get him through. But if there's anybody else that sneaks through and joins Murkowski and Collins, and we don't know for sure where Senator Curtis from Utah stands on this. So you say there's representatives in there now in the Senate building talking to Curtis
Yeah.
about letting him understand how vitally important this is. Now, he's been in the House long enough that he must know how the game is played. And he must know what kind, or I think it's only obvious for us to assume what kind of pressure is on him now to roll with the party. So the majority of the Republicans look like they want to support President
Yeah.
Trump's choices. But just a couple of outliers is enough to stop this whole thing. So when they call this number, what should they be asking for? The liars thing?
Liars Bureau. What
Liars-
you should do is just say you heard Harley on the Stockwell program and you'd like to find out what you can do. I think it will be a tape. You'll be calling into a tape, but you can leave your number, your name and number, and we'll call you back and have a chance to talk at more length. This is not a phone that's manned by a live person, but the whole point is the people who will be calling you back are people who have been briefed on what's happening inside the Congress, what effect we're having, who needs to be targeted, and so on. So you can have an opportunity then to have a longer discussion to figure out exactly what's going on. But if you want, you leave your email address and we'll email you the Liars Bureau report. It's a 14-page dossier.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that yesterday on my show. I just never got time to get around to, but I read through that thing. That is absolutely fascinating. That would be a great movie script coming out of
Wouldn't it?
Hollywood. The intrigue that's in there. Now, one other thing, everybody, what you can do is to call Congressman or Senator Curtis's office and let him know you're tired of the crap, the rot, the swamp, the fact that our intelligence community does not seem to understand constitutional principles, especially the Bill of Rights, and they seem much more concerned about what you and I are doing in our private bedrooms and our private conversations than they are necessarily with international intrigue. And which brings up the point, Gabbert's flip-flop on 720, Article 720 out of the Patriot Act.
Yeah.
Why did she do that? And there's a couple other flip-flops in there that concern me as well.
Well, I think what happened is what always happens, which is you have to make compromises with some of the senators who say, I'm not going to vote for you unless you do what we tell you.
Right.
Now, the question is, would she then get in there and say, well, I've looked it over again and I realize I was right before? So maybe she's making a deal. Maybe she's instructed by the president's people that if you have to do something like that, you can always change your vote, change your mind once you're in there. But it shows something because the FISA court was one of the institutions that was weaponized against Trump and against the campaign in a totally blatantly illegal action that was run by the FBI, by McCabe. Comey was in on it. Remember Peter Strzok and his girlfriend Lisa Page?
Yes.
These were people who lied, submitted false and lying affidavits to the court, to the FISA court, in order to get a wiretap and who knows what else, a surveillance on the Trump campaign. So that's the kind of crimes that were committed by the people who now say we can't let Kash Patel come in. Remember, Patel worked for Devin Nunes, who was one of the few congressmen who was dogged in his pursuit of the corruption in the FBI. And we know so much now. Jack, you know, I wrote a whole bunch of articles during the Russiagate story showing the connection. It was the Clinton networks, the Obama networks in US intelligence, working with the Tony Blair networks in Britain. The whole Russiagate story started with Britain's GCHQ, their equivalent of the NSA, claiming they had picked up on Russian wiretaps, that there's a discussion about interfering in the US election. Hennigan from GCHQ went in to talk to John Brennan, not even the head of NSA. He went to Brennan, and Brennan then went to Obama, and they worked out this whole strategy for going after Trump. So this was illegal actions. You know, you talk about Russian meddling. It was the Obama team that was meddling in the 2016 election. And for whom? For Hillary Clinton. And you have a whole crew of these people that we've identified who were like Adam Schiff, now the senator from California. He still lies about Russiagate. Even though Mueller couldn't prove anything of the charges, Schiff is saying we know for a fact that Russia got Trump elected. So, you know, this is what we're fighting. We're fighting a narrative. It's designed to keep the American people confused, ignorant, and in the dark. And that's why, in order to keep that going, you can't have someone like Patel or Tulsi Gabbard in there, or Robert F. Kennedy Jr. either, because the same people are trying to keep him out.
Well, there is a growing number, as far as RFK is concerned, a growing number of physicians, researchers, medical people who are banding together to make sure he does get confirmed.
Yeah.
Because they know the same rot that exists in the intelligence community exists inside Health and Human Services, especially in the FDA and the CDC. And when you look at all the lies that came out of these people during COVID, you know, why would you ever trust anything they had to say in the future? And that's one of the things that Kennedy seems committed to clean up, that they can once again be institutions of trust rather than, you know, a lying collection of people totally bought and sold by the pharmaceutical companies several times over. So
well, big pharma, Jack, as you know, is one of what's basically part of the corporate cartels.
Yes.
And these are the interlocking boards of directors that interface with the big banks, with companies like BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. You know, I've just been doing some research on BlackRock because the guy who's running for Chancellor of Germany, Friedrich Merz, was the head of Germany BlackRock for 6 years. And he's one of the worst war hawks over there.
Yeah, and he's in the lead.
Yeah.
He'll probably get elected.
Probably.
Yeah.
But he'll have trouble putting together a coalition because the German people, even though they've been asleep for the last 5 to 10 years, they don't trust the people who are in the current coalition government. And Merz is going to have to get someone from that coalition to join him to form a government. So, you know, you have the ironic situation where a former leftist, Sarah Wagenknecht, has a new party, which is about 5, 6, 7%. But the Alternative for Deutschland, the so-called right-wing extremist party, is the other party involved in well, is the second now in the polls, and they're against the Ukraine war, they're against the Green New Deal, they're against NATO, they're against the European Union. Keep in mind, all of Europe is in turmoil. Macron is ruling in a sense as a dictator. Zelensky's not president anymore; he's a dictator. In Germany, we have no government. In Eastern Europe, you have Slovakia, you have Hungary, are all turning against the European Union. So, and who are they looking to? They're looking to Trump in the United States and this idea of national sovereignty.
Speaking of that, let's talk about Starmer and the UK right now, with Trump turning down their suggestions of ambassador, because when you look at those 100 or more people from the UK government over here
Right.
electioneering and campaigning for Harris against Trump during the election period, uh, it's like Trump doesn't forget any slight or slap in the face that anybody's given him. And so this special relationship, I just love
Yeah.
that title, special relationship with our former colonial masters, who actually still are to some degree our colonial masters. When I saw this, I just broke into laughter that he was not going to accept. I forget the name.
Peter Mandelson.
Mandelson, yes,
The Mandelson is known in Britain as the Prince of Darkness because he
yes,
was the spinner behind Tony Blair, the guy who did develop the narrative for Blair. And Mandelson is very much anti-Trump, anti-national sovereignty. And Mandelson, remember the previous ambassador when Trump was president the first time was Kim Darroch, who talked about needing to get the Trump whisperers to talk to Trump to convince him to stick with the British. And at the same time, he was sending emails back to the Foreign Office saying Trump is inept, he's stupid, the US Congress doesn't know what they're doing. You know, that's the contempt they showed, the same kind of arrogance that you get from a Hillary Clinton or a Kamala Harris or a Barack Obama. I think they learned it from the British because the British looked down their noses at almost everyone. But
well,
this was a shock to the Brits when Trump said he doesn't want Mandelson, keep him over there.
you know, when George W. Bush was elected the first time, his first trip was to go over there and kiss the backside of the Queen. When
Yeah,
Obama was elected, his first trip was to go over there and kiss the backside of the Queen. And now Trump, with his second election, is telling the Brits, nah, no, I don't like that guy. Suggest somebody else. Just what a contrast. What a contrast. And maybe I shouldn't be so crude about the backside of the Queen, but I don't. I mean, a borough of London is called Stockwell. I mean, my blood comes from the Thames, and so But by the same token, I have come to understand that the Chatham House, the British Empire, the
yeah,
monarchy may not be our best friend as far as American sovereignty and inner strength is concerned. And so when I see Trump turning down some of these ambassadorial suggestions from the UK, it does warm my heart. But at the same time, he's sending 2,000-pound bombs to be used on Gaza. And now Gaza seems to be still observing the ceasefire. But look at what's happening in the West Bank.
yeah. And also, unfortunately, this idea that Trump threw out the other day of having the Palestinians, 1 million and more of them,
Yeah,
taken in by Egypt.
yeah,
One of the reasons Egypt won't do that is that if there's loyalty among some of those Palestinians for Hamas, they'll be tied to the Muslim Brotherhood because
yes,
that's who Hamas is connected with. The last thing you want to do is send Muslim Brotherhood forces into Egypt because during the so-called Arab Spring, remember, under Morsi, they took over Egypt. And El-Sisi, the current president, had to rally the population to take the country back. So this idea of the Abraham Accords, including Egypt and Jordan and others, isn't going to work. What would work, though, is if Trump got together with Xi Jinping, because look what the Chinese did. They worked out an arrangement with the Saudis that ended the petrodollar system, which was Henry Kissinger's looting operation to when the two Arab oil embargoes in 73 and 78 took place and the prices went through the roof. The money was deposited in British banks, and that's the origin of the petrodollar agreement. And that was then used by Kissinger for laundered operations. Now, the Saudis just dropped that, and instead they're now making a deal to buy or to sell oil to China for the yuan. The Chinese then came in and got a rapprochement agreement between Iran and Saudi Arabia. And the Saudis don't want to be seen as destroying the potential of a Palestinian state. So what Trump could do, and this is what we've proposed, this is Lyndon LaRouche's old proposal, is the Oasis Plan, a water deal. Build some canals, have some desalination, put up some small modular nuclear plants along the canals to desalinate the water, and bloom the desert, both for the Palestinians and for the Israelis and for any of the other neighbors. The Chinese would work on that. That was part of what was in the original Oslo agreement, but was never realized, largely because of Netanyahu and his Greater Israel fanatics' opposition to it. So there are solutions, and this is where we've got to get to Trump. And let me say one other thing on this water question, Jack.
Yeah.
In terms of the Western states, when
Nawapa.
Trump was going after Gavin Newsom legitimately for Newsom's crazy environmentalism and not taking care of California during the fires, he made a reference to bringing water down from Alaska and Canada. Did you hear that?
Yes. Where do you think he got that idea?
Well, that's the old LaRouche proposal for NWAPA that came from, get this, Robert Kennedy as a senator in 1968 introduced a bill to make NWAPA the policy, which would have cost a few billion back then. But it would have prevented, it would have just increased the water supply to Western states, including possibly Mexico, Arizona. And this is a plan that, again, you want to rebuild the country? Go for the big projects, credit policy. And this is the kind of thing that Trump could do because he's a builder. He likes that stuff. So the Oasis Plan and the NWAPA are two projects that would make sense.
My cat is, I haven't.
The cat's excited by the vote
Yeah,
coming up.
yeah, that's it. She has a particular opinion regarding the intelligence community in America. And
She leaves it in the cat box, I think.
yeah, yeah, she does. She leaves the litter box, which I changed last night. Oh, that's hilarious. Now, another question I wanted to ask was a couple things. Again, that phone number, everybody, 703-777-4494 for more information on this. But the most important thing is to send an email, a phone call, whatever, to Senator Curtis's office, telling him you heard on K-Talk, because he knows what K-Talk is, that you heard on K-Talk, and he knows you represent, just one call from you would represent hundreds of people at K-Talk. And I've asked K-Talk audience to do this as well, to call Curtis's office and make sure he stands for cleaning up the crap in Washington, beginning with the intelligence community. That's not hard to do. That's a very, very easy thing to do. In fact, I will be doing it when I'm off air before I start seeing patients. Now, a question or two about Netanyahu. Is Trump controlling Netanyahu, or is Netanyahu controlling Trump? And about now, Gvir has left the government. Netanyahu still has Smotrich and his faction to back him up. But and then I hate the double, triple questions. Also, would you agree that Hamas has won the war? So take that in any angle or order you want.
Well, let's start going backwards. Hamas is still standing, and Netanyahu promised a total victory. Netanyahu's in big trouble. I mean, it's not just the corruption scandals against him. That's why he's keeping the war going.
Yes.
It's the whole question of why was Israel unprepared? Were they really unprepared? Was it an intelligence failure, or was it a false flag?
Yes, they knew this was coming.
Yeah.
I believe they knew this was coming.
And so Netanyahu's in trouble. Now, Trump has a certain affinity on the one hand for Netanyahu, but on the other hand, he also has contempt for him, as we've seen. And he did send in his personal emissary to tell Netanyahu to have the ceasefire. Now, I think the thing you have to watch out for is people like Jared Kushner, who would
Yes.
like to build a resort in Gaza on Palestinian land. And that's the kind of, well, let's just be honest, personal corruption that you see in some of these networks. Now, if Trump is interested in peace for the Israelis and the Palestinians, you can't give Netanyahu the weapons the way Biden did. You know, it just killed me to watch Blinken talk about how we have to have a more humanitarian policy towards the Palestinian civilians while handing over weapons and bombs to the Israelis, saying we need more humanitarian killing. The whole world saw that as hypocrisy and American complicity. Now, if Trump is smart, he'll get away from that by looking for a solution which includes a Palestinian state and rebuilding the Gaza and the other areas, including the West Bank. I don't know if that's going to happen, but most of the world is looking for that to happen. And if you don't support that, if you support that, you'll be called an anti-Semite because supposedly you'll be interfering with the protection of the Jewish population. Well, I don't think killing children in Palestine is going to stop terrorism. In fact, it's going to ensure that terrorism has a foothold in the next generation.
Yeah,
And
because it's working.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It also, Israel's economy depends on the United States. And if the United States would tell Netanyahu to stop it, he would have no choice but to stop it. So Trump will be tested very severely internationally on what he does in Gaza.
Well, we're coming here to the end of the stream this morning, and I assure you that this is the largest audience I've had yet on the stream. This is really good. Thank you, everybody. Please like and subscribe and share whatever it is so the audience can build. I will have Harley and other people like him on here on a more regular basis. What we'll probably have to do while I am we can do live streams like we're doing right now outside of the K-Talk broadcast time.
Uh-huh.
So it may be in the evening, which would be his morning. What time is it over there now?
It's almost 5 o'clock.
That's
5 o'clock in the afternoon.
There, okay, all right.
It's a good time for me.
Yeah, it's a good time for you. I only do K-Talk Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and it's very possible to do something on a Thursday or Friday morning where there won't be a collision with K-Talk broadcast. And at the same time, anytime I'm going to do a broadcast, a live stream, the subscribers will be notified that it's taking place. And they will also be advised of the fact that it's being recorded, and if they can't tune in live with us, they can always hear the recording later on.
Well, just let me know, Jack, and I always make myself available for you.
Oh, I appreciate that. And like the good old days,
Yeah.
except your hair turned white.
Well, what's left of it?
Yeah, well, yeah, look at this. I mean, this is crazy. And that's not the worst part. The worst part is the skin that's hanging down right here.
Yeah.
This chicken neck.
Yeah,
Oh,
I hear you. But Jack, I've got to run because I've got another interview to do. But please, people, make this call 703-777-4494 and become part of the fight to make sure that Trump has the capacity to follow through on his pledge to drain the swamp.
Harley, my deepest thanks and appreciation for the influence you've been in my life and the people you've introduced me to. There's not enough thanks left in my vocabulary to express how I really feel. So until we meet again, and everybody, I'm bringing the stream to an end here. It is recorded. You can listen to it or refer to it to other people later on. Call Senator Curtis's office. I'll see you all later. Thanks, Harley.
Thanks, Jack.
All right. and we should be winding down right now to